Afternoon, everybody. As Jeremy very kindly said, I'm chairman of Crossrail, and although the theme is very much procurement, forgive me if I don't take the opportunity to use my own programme as a means of talking about what we're going through in London. I realise this is quite an international audience. Some of you know nothing about Crossrail, some will know perhaps even more than I do. But I'd just like to take you through the Crossrail story and just how we're trying to create an impact of some substance in terms of the context of London. The programme itself is a new railway. It's 120 kilometres long, west to east. It starts just west of Heathrow at a little town called Maidenhead, and in the east it goes to another town in Essex called Shenfield. I didn't intend that you should be able to read this chart, just to show you that there is a railway route. The blue lines that you see on there are existing track. To the west, it's the Great Western slow track, and to the east, it's the Great Eastern. And in that regard, we'll be, with Network Rail, undertaking a significant amount of work to upgrade those facilities. We are spending up to £2.3 billion to upgrade the blue sections with regard to electrification in the west, platform extensions, new gate lines, step-free access at many of the stations, and in that regard, be able to take over some of the existing services that are on those lines. But the project itself is almost £15 billion. It's the largest infrastructure programme in Europe. It's, by any stage, a huge programme. And the bulk of that work will take place around the centre of London. What you see in the red are 20 kilometres of twin-track tube, 7-metre diameter, going across the middle of London, which is already a very busy place. We have to move our way over and under many of the existing tube stations on railway that's down there, lots of utilities, and a lot of the history of London that I suspect we haven't yet discovered all of. But each of these stations are existing stations with the exception of one which is to the east at Canary Wharf. Canary Wharf is an interesting proposition. Currently it's the quite a dynamic part of London. It has 120,000 people a day commuting to travel to work. It's constrained today in resilience terms by its railway capacity. You wouldn't work at Canary Wharf and travel by road. You would travel by rail. And an important part of the Canary Wharf strategy is to grow the capacity from 120,000 people a day to 180,000 people a day travelling to work. And they can't do that without a new railway, which is part and parcel of the argument about why London needs some more capacity. In the UK, it's a key component of government's growth agenda for a variety of reasons. There is a growing emphasis on the importance of infrastructure renewal, but there's equally an important emphasis on skills and employment, and to try and change the shape of the economy to where there's more value added in terms of wealth creation. In our business model, it creates over 40 billion of GT benefit to the economy over its lifetime. And again, certainly in the context of the UK, and I suspect many of the countries represented today, the experience is that we always understate the regeneration benefits that goes with the railway moving into new areas. London itself is a global city, and it has every intention of remaining so. The forecast is that London over the next decade will grow by another 1 million people. And Crossrail itself will add 10% more capacity to the network of public sector transport when it's completed in 2018. Within 2 years, we're currently at about 3,000 people. In the next 2 years, there will be 14,000 people working directly on this programme. And the supply chain impact, we reckon, is about 3 to 1. So we're talking about in excess of 60,000 jobs being created as a consequence of this investment. And it does bring huge national benefits as well. Today there is an increasing emphasis on ensuring public sector investment maximise the value of the contribution it makes to the economy who generates the funds. So although our market is based on open competition, the importance of those competitions demonstrating a commitment to this market is an important aspect in terms of long-term commitment to the industry and to the businesses that operate around it. Travel to work time, an important consideration about how we move the extra million people over time to their workplace. Just a few examples, station to station, of the sort of benefits. East to west has always struggled with actually getting a journey that actually avoids having to change at different stations according to where you're going to end up. To date, we've committed about £5 billion sterling in terms of capital expenditure, and we've spent £2 billion so far. Our tunnelling, I'll touch on that in just a couple of minutes, is now committed. Our station boxes are also by and large committed, with the exception of 2 or 3 major sections in the central section. Rolling stock has been not without its challenges. Those bidding for the work, and that's Siemens, CAF, Bombardier and Hitachi, have been invited to bid for this work, and over the next few months we'll be evaluating the tender that comes from that negotiation. We're very keen to ensure that we have open competition, but as part of the understanding about the commitment to the UK economy, the bidders will have to actually match some considerations that we think are very important. Every contract, every procurement that Crossrail has undertaken to date includes a number of additional features that are, in our experience, relatively unique. If you want a contract with Crossrail, you will commit. For every £3 million worth of contract, you will commit to have an apprentice, or somebody who is currently employed, or making a contribution to the community. I'll touch on how that affects the way we've approached this, but the importance of not only supporting the project itself, but enabling a legacy to be created as a consequence of this investment is a very important national objective that is currently in place. But it is about a journey. A lot of the emphasis this afternoon will talk about this being the status at which we're at with regard to construction. But we're very determined that this project is a railway system. The procurement to date has been predominantly around tunnelling and stations, but later this year we start the process of looking for signalling, track, P-way, communications, and in that regard, station being equipped. But the project itself is going to complete in 2018. Very much the plan at that stage is that this will be transferred under Transport for London, and they will operate the service that will then connect with the national network. Doesn't show up very well on this, but I'm sure you'll recognise the roundel. It's already been allocated its colour, so it will be very much part of the TfL family when this project is completed in 2018. But it is something that, as a project, very easy to get carried away with the complexities and the challenges of building this railway. But we're quite determined to try and create a different passenger experience in the journey that we're trying to describe. It's an opportunity to try and make a step change in the way that London presents itself to its passengers. The platform area, we've already built some mock-ups, will be substantively different. It will look like the 21st century. It will have a feel that actually tries to take into account passengers who use the railway today. It will have to use the latest technology and will be a step change from what we've been, because of the legacy of history that goes with some of the existing infrastructure. We will be trying to make a statement change in terms of passenger experience. I will also touch on the importance of legacy. But the important thing about Crossrail as well, a very busy chart, but it tries to demonstrate that this is part of an integrated transport system for London. Every central station that we will build will either interface, and predominantly interface, with London Underground, but it also will interface with Network Rail, particularly at Paddington, Liverpool Street, and Farringdon. In the central section, it will be very much a metro system. It will run at 24 trains per hour, but it will be a large train set. London Underground typically have a 3-metre diameter tube. Ours will be 7. Underground typically have a 6 or 7 car train set. This will be facilitised in the central sections for 12. So this is very much a commuter train, but the central section has to operate as a metro system. In terms of passenger experience, one of the things that we work very hard at is to ensure that our stations, as you see them visually from outside, don't stand out as a Crossrail ticket hall or a Crossrail station. It has to fit within the environment that operates around that location. Whether it's Tottenham Court Road, or whether it's Bond Street, or whether it's Paddington, there are themes around those areas that very much based on urban realm that actually have to have those features. But when you get down to the platform, you will know, wherever you are, that you're on a Crossrail platform. And typically, a Crossrail platform will look something like the diagrams you see on the right-hand side. If you don't recognise these two figures, I'm sure you recognise the guy. That's Boris. The lady on the right is Justin Green, who is Secretary of State. Just 2 weeks ago, we called it a launch, but we basically named our first 2 tunnel boring machines, which are just west. So if you flew into Heathrow, just as you're going into Paddington, you look to your left, you'll see the tunnel boring machines being assembled. The first one has already moved about half a kilometre, and it's now at the entrance to where it starts tunnelling in the next week to 2 weeks. That site you see there is actually where we're assembling our tunnel boring machines. There are 8 in total that have been procured from Heron Connect, and the first 2, as I say, will go into action in the next month, and the following 6 will actually work from the east because of the different drive locations that we have, and that's just an example where these are twin tubes, so 2 come from the west and 6, because of the various ground conditions and the different routes that we follow, require 6 further tunnel boring machines in total. We complete our tunnelling in 2015. Sometimes it's very difficult to get a scale of what Crossrail represents. The top picture is one that is Paddington. Again, the historians will recognise that Paddington has a lot of history. It's a Brunel building. It's protected. And we're trying to ensure that we maintain that as an important statement of what Crossrail will try to interface with. This, for me, will be our signature station. What you see in front of it, if you're familiar with Paddington over many years, the taxi rank that's been there forever is gone. We've moved it, and where we've moved the taxi rank from is where we're going to be building our new station. So what you see there is a cutaway that shows it going down about 60 metres deep to create the box for the new station. Now again, if you're familiar with London, this sometimes gets described as an iconic building. Those not familiar with London, don't go to look at it. It's not that iconic. And there are some who wish it wasn't there, but this is Centre Point. And at Centre Point, you have Tottenham Court Road, and it's got the Central and Northern Line, 2 of the busiest lines on the London Underground network. And over the past few months, there's been a huge amount of work being done to actually expand the capacity at Crossrail. So what you're looking at for London Underground, so what you're looking at there is an underground shot of the work that's been taken whilst the station predominantly has been kept open. I said getting the scale of Crossrail is sometimes difficult to appreciate, but that's what we're doing at Tottenham Court Road. It's by any imagination one of the most demanding engineering jobs you could ever imagine, trying to construct this while at the same time ensuring that we maximise the availability of Tottenham Court Road. It is so big that all our central stations will have 2 ticket offices. And again, one of the unique features, which I think builds on much of the experiences that have certainly occurred in Hong Kong with MTR, is that there will be 3.3 million square feet of oversight development on top of our ticket offices. So again, one of the small pieces of information is that not only will we be building a railway, but we'll be the 10th largest property developer in Europe in the middle of this Crossrail development, with all the oversight developments that are being managed with Transport for London and then sold back to the private sector. Again, if you're familiar with London, very much modern statement of London's business presentation is in Canary Wharf. This station is currently being built. It's ahead of programme. It will be completed in 2015. Again, if you're familiar with Canary Wharf, if you could imagine the main building, picking it up, putting it on its side, that's the size of the station box that we're building in Canary Wharf. And again, very typically Canary Wharf, they're not going to be doing very large oversight developments in terms of using airspace, but we'll certainly be developing the retail mall, which is the traditional Canary Wharf where all the retail is actually underground. This will continue to be the theme at Canary Wharf. Rolling stock, you can see the sort of specification that we're looking for. We're also looking to try and make a statement about how this train should look. It's not a very natural phrase for an engineer to use, but it's been expressed to me that we want a beautiful train. But we want something that actually does make it look like something that challenges, but it gives a passenger experience that makes them proud of what we're trying to deliver here. So right now, that's the way the layout looks, but my expectation over the next 18 months, that will start to have a different feel to it as we try to ensure that it does have that sense of a unique experience. So in procurement terms, most of our major contracts have been much larger than we'd anticipated. With the exception of the last contract we've let, they've all been based on consortiums using the NC contract, and so far it's worked well for us. We've had very good competition. We have used the OJEC process, and it has worked for us. Going forward, we still have plans later this year for signaling procurement, track, all the ancillary equipment. So we're looking to get much of the bulk of our procurement away by the end of 2012, early part of 2013. So to date, we did have some delays ensuring that we got the specification and the requirements of the rolling stock, what we wanted it to reflect, and that took a little while to resolve. But on every other procurement milestone, we've hit our objectives in terms of timing. And in a way, in a contract of this nature, it's very important to make a decision. Because not making a decision means that all of the other consequential contracts that are very often relying on the same consortium start to block up quite heavily. So very important consideration for us is a good, healthy competition, open competition, but ensuring that we have a process that ensures that we can make a decision. So far, we've hit every date, and to date, we've felt very comfortable that we've made the right procurement decision. So if I just touch on skills and employment. I mentioned earlier about 3 million per output in terms of apprenticeships, employment, and community. We will have at least 400 apprentices on the programme. We started 6 months ago from a standing start and now have 75, so I remain confident that we're going to beat 400 and move beyond that. We also are trying to ensure that we have skills that take us forward. Again, in the context of the UK, very heavy emphasis today on the importance of infrastructure investment. And one of the things that is a feature of London is that historically it relied on immigration to actually make good the skill shortfall that existed around some of our key projects. We have to try and change that. We have to try and demonstrate that infrastructure investment is not only good as a legacy issue, but it's also good in terms of skills and employment going forward. We have a huge project that we have to mobilize very quickly. And one of our estimates, for example, is that in terms of underground construction skills, we probably needed about 1,500 for ourselves. Our estimate in the UK about how many there were is 700. Average age, 55. Not a recipe for actually encouraging investment for the future if we don't have the skill set that actually enables us to demonstrate that we can deliver infrastructure projects beyond what we're trying to do at Crossrail. And right now, in the pipeline, there are a number of key infrastructure projects that we rely on the same skill sets that we're trying to use at Crossrail. Not least, in this sort of audience, big agenda item right now is to continue to invest in the underground, and secondly, to ensure that we can commit to High Speed 2 and all the benefits that come from that in terms of economic regeneration and skills and employment. We built a skills academy in East London. It's world class. We invested £15 million in there. There are the normal things that you would expect to see in terms of accreditation for working safely on the railway. It's where our apprentices are also based. And it's where we're helping young people to get used to the world of work. It sounds an easy thing to say, but if you've never worked, it's a very challenging aspect in terms of the younger generation not having the same opportunities as certainly I had. And I guess many of you in this room had, that there was an expectation when you left school or when you left university, there would be a job somewhere for you. So far, we have a training program. 50% of those who've been through our training program of pre-employment have got jobs on our project. We expect over the next 6 months to start another 2,500 people on this program. So what we're talking about is not just a contractual obligation, but to ensure commercially we put in place the opportunities for our contractors to use the skills and the tools that we're making available to them. This shot at the bottom actually is David Cameron. He's been to the Skills Academy. He came twice actually to the project in 2 weeks, was so taken with what he saw. But it's just another example of how not only do you have to get the project right, but you have to do this in such a way that the politicians can also see a gain in terms of the national message about skills and employment being part and parcel of the infrastructure investment. And almost at the end, legacy again, big effort in terms of actually looking at urban realm. Not only are we trying to build a railway, but how people get to the railway station is something that we're placing a great deal of store on. So again, a number of very large projects ongoing around places like Tottenham Court Road, for example, where we're actually trying to ensure that there's a legacy in terms of urban realm around all these station locations. And finally, no project can get away from the sustainability agenda, neither are we. And just one simple example that we have almost 6 million cubic meters of spoil to remove. We're going to rail it down to the river, ship it down into the estuary at Thames, and create a bird reserve of 150 acres. I'm not sure how that converts into metric, but it's a huge site. Thank you.